Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Ryobi P755 18-volt compact workshop blower. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up we have the battery slot. The battery slot in this blower is your typical Ryobi battery slot, and will accept any of Ryobi's 18-volt batteries. There really is no wiggling or jiggling. I didn't have any problems with the battery not fully connecting or being loose in its socket, so quite frankly it gets a pass from me. The battery life on this particular blower is around 15 minutes of solid performance using a 4 amp hour battery with about a minute of dying performance, so quite frankly it's passable, but it definitely could be improved if they decide to go with a brushless motor. So with that being said, let's move on. And next up we have the grip. The grip on this particular tool features a nice rubberized texture and is very comfortable for my smaller sized hands, although I don't think you'll have any issues if you have larger sized hands. The grip is large enough where you can wear gloves if you need to or want to, and quite frankly I don't really have any complaints. The trigger is easily accessed by your trigger finger, which can be triggering to some people, and the speed selector or limiter switch I should say can be easily accessed with your thumb as well. So quite frankly the grip definitely gets a pass from me and I don't really have any complaints. So let's move on. And next up we have the trigger. The trigger is made out of a smooth plastic and has no rubberized texture or patterns in the trigger itself. Overall the trigger itself is a variable speed trigger, and it does have low speeds and high speeds, but it is a little bit difficult to access the low speeds, and the easiest way to access the low speeds is to go to a high speed and then to drop down. Trying to access the low speeds by gradually pulling the trigger is a little bit difficult because the trigger does feature some stickiness, which makes it a little bit more challenging to use than I personally would have liked to have seen, and I definitely think there could be some improvements here. But at the end of the day, most people operate their blowers at maximum speed, so most people probably won't notice. It's just something you need to be aware of if you plan on using this blower a lot at its lower speeds. It can be a little bit tricky to access. Okay, moving on to the speed selector lever. The speed selector lever is located at the top of the tool and is easily accessed by your thumb. The lever itself is made out of plastic and has 3 different settings. The first setting will allow you to access 1/3 the speed that the blower is capable of producing. Setting number 2 will allow you to access 2/3, and setting number 3 will allow you to access the full power of the blower. Now, on my particular copy of the blower, I didn't notice this until the return window had closed, unfortunately. But on speed setting number 2, if I pull the trigger extra hard, I can, well, access all the speed of the blower, and so I don't really need speed setting number 3. I'm not sure if this just is how they all are, or if I just have a defective copy, although I'm leaning towards a defective copy, but it's just something that you need to be aware of. So if you do end up purchasing this blower, make sure you test it immediately before the window, or I should say the return window, closes on you, because I didn't, and now I'm stuck with a slightly defective blower, but it doesn't really affect the performance, so I can live with it. But I know there are people that can't live with it, so just make sure you try it out as soon as you buy it to make sure you don't have this issue. And yes, I could send it off to Ryobi to have them repair it, but quite frankly, I use it too often, and I just don't think it's that big of an issue for me personally. So with that being said, let's move on. And next up we have the blower tube. Now the blower tube on this particular blower is a fairly, well, decent design and a common design when it comes to these workshop blowers. It's made out of flexible rubber, which will keep you from marring your work surface, such as that nice wood piece you just finished, or your car's engine compartment or paint job. So quite frankly, it is an acceptable design, and I don't really have any complaints, and it's a fairly basic design. The only thing I might have changed was maybe add a plastic extension to make it a little bit longer so it was easier to sweep off your floor of your workshop. But other than that, that's about my only real complaint when it comes to the blower tube on this particular tool. Well, that and maybe add a ton more accessories like Works does on one of their workshop blowers, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, without a battery and the blower tube attached, the blower weighs 1,162 grams, which is a little over 2.5 pounds, which is about middle of the pack for a blower like this. And with a 4 amp hour battery, it weighs 1,866 grams, or a little over 4 pounds. So like I said earlier, middle of the pack. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the performance. Now, Ryobi claims it operates at 160 miles an hour, at least when it comes to the airspeed, at 100 CFM. So that's a decent performance, even if the CFM rating is incredibly low. But those wind speeds will definitely help you clear off whatever surface you're working on. So as far as I'm concerned, it works great for its intended purpose as a workshop blower, and it will probably work fine for clearing off those dried leaves or dried grass clippings on your deck. Now, if it's fresh grass clippings, it'll probably still work just fine as long as it hasn't been run over by your shoe or a truck or something. And when it comes to wet leaves, you're going to want something more powerful. Sorry. But like I said before, this is a workshop blower, and it does a good job at cleaning dust off your sanders or circular saws or saber saws, whatever you have dust or sawdust in. And quite frankly, in those regards, it does just fine, and I've been perfectly happy with its performance. I will say that I personally would have liked to have seen some extra accessories included, like something for, well, filling up like an air mattress or a hose to get into tighter spots where you couldn't get the full-size blower. You have a little bit of flexibility with that rubberized blower tube, but there's just not enough there. And like I said earlier, an extension tube would be incredibly nice as well. So there's definitely some improvements that could be made here, and some of Ryobi's competition have already made them. So I think Ryobi probably should, well, look at, well, upping their game a little bit here. And probably add a brushless motor to increase the runtime, which is sort of, well, short, at least for a lot of people. So with that being said, let's go into the pros and cons. Okay, first up we have 18 volt. 18 volt means that this will work with all of your Ryobi 18 volt batteries, and you can adapt batteries over from other brands via third-party adapters, but remember you do that at your own risk. Powerful. Considering the size, this blower actually generates quite a bit of power, but there are some downsides to this as well that we'll cover here in a second. Rubber blower tube. The rubber blower tube is a cool feature because it will help prevent you from damaging surfaces, and it can also help you get into tight areas that you couldn't get a normal plastic tube into. So in my opinion, this is a pro feature. Compact. This is actually a fairly compact blower, and this will definitely help you when you need to transport the blower, or if you just don't have a lot of space to store a full-size blower. So at the end of the day, the compactness is a pro feature in my opinion. Speed limiter. Overall, the speed limiter, even though it's defective on mine, is actually a cool feature, and I can see where it can be very helpful in a lot of situations. So overall, in my opinion, it's a pro feature as long as it works on your model. Lightweight. Overall, this is a very lightweight blower, and this can be handy in a variety of different situations, everything from transporting it to remote areas, or just well, using it for extended periods. So quite frankly, this is a pro in my opinion. And the first meh is runtime. The runtime on this isn't horrible, but it's not good either. Quite frankly, 15 minutes is an acceptable performance, but as far as I'm concerned, it could be longer if they'd went with a brushless motor. So in the future, I hope a newer updated model will emerge with a brushless motor. And the first con would be the price. Coming in at $69.99, this is definitely an expensive little blower. I guess it's not really that expensive when you compare it against other workshop blowers. I just have a hard time paying that kind of money for a small blower like this. No accessories. You really can't buy any accessories for this particular blower, and it only comes with the blower tube. So quite frankly, this is definitely missing some attachments that could be very useful, and definitely a missed opportunity by Ryobi here. Loud. Overall, this is a loud little blower, and well, that sort of is the territory for blowers, but this thing seems extra loud, and is definitely something that gets onto my nerves fairly quickly. So as far as I'm concerned, if you do end up buying this blower, you might want to buy some good headphones or ear protection just to be on the safe side. And last but not least, we have brush. Yes, this is a brushed blower, which means it's definitely not going to be nearly as well battery efficient or as powerful as it could be. And that is definitely a con in my opinion, at least when it comes to blowers. And that is it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this blower. Overall, I actually really do like this blower. It comes in handy for a variety of different situations, and quite frankly, I don't really think the shortcomings outweigh the positives. Well, except maybe the price. But as long as you can find it on discount or used and you don't mind getting it that way, it's not a bad little blower to get your hands on. And quite frankly, I really think that, well, Ryobi should probably update this with a newer model that has more features and more accessories, and I really think that that would be something worth looking into. So at the end of the day, if Ryobi does that or not, I have no idea, but for me personally, this one's still working great and it's still super useful. Just remember to check that speed limiter lever to make sure it's functioning properly before your return window closes, unlike me. And with that being said, we'll see you next time. God bless.